Okay, we're ready to make another pass on our drawing. And one of the things that can happen with sheet metal is once the drawing creates the configuration, and if you go back into that configuration and change the flat pattern, alright, so I'm coming back over to the part, going into the configuration manager. My current configuration is the flat pattern, except at some point I hit the flatten button when I should have just been going between the two configurations. So that will leave it in its current state. We'll make sure to save, and then we'll come back over to the sheet, and that should correct my view. So one of the downsides is we're having to deal with this kind of a space issue. So I'm going to break this into another sheet. So we'll have a flat pattern sheet, and since that went, let's see, that was sheet 2, so I'll probably go ahead and rename, and just off the screen I'm going to be able to rename, and we'll make this sheet 2 flat, and then I'll come over. Now we used to be able to do the single click like in Windows, but that hasn't been working, so I'm going to go to sheet 2 and bend or bent, however we want to do that. Alright, so we're going to try. I'm going to hold down the control button and select my 3 views, and then do a control X. We'll hit it with a yes to all. Come over to the second sheet and do a control V. That way I haven't really lost anything, but I'm able to get everything over into the second sheet. So probably one of the notes I'll want to put in, since we're trying to make this a little more readable, is that this is the flat pattern. So we'll add a note, and either flat drawing or flat pattern. And I can go ahead and hit the OK. Just going to highlight that, hit the Control C on the keyboard, jump over to the next, and in the same general vicinity we will locate our notes. Okay, so flat drawing, bend drawing. And now one of the things with the dimensions, if we do the overall, and if we need the bends, so notice that the bends are going to be in solid for the up and the kind of the phantom dashed lines for the down. Some of these bends are going to get in the way if we go to put the dimensions in place. So we'll want to try to minimize how much we cross over. If we go back to our rules, our recommendations for the drawings, we're going to try and minimize the amount of crossover for the extension lines. So one of the things I may go ahead and do is just highlight all of these annotations. So holding down the control button, select each of the items, and then we can go over and apply a leader. So leader makes it a little messy. That wasn't quite what I was expecting it to do, but it depends on how we set up this dimensioning scheme. Since everything was highlighted at the same time, let's see. Try and pick some different combinations here to see if I can get it to move. Okay, so leader with an extension, kind of like just the leader. And manipulating those around a little bit, that's not cooperating as well as I thought it should. Alright, so let's go back to this one and see what combination. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So those are wanting to stay. So I need to switch. What are those called? Leader left and leader right. Alright, so that kind of makes sense that based on the direction and the bend, that will help a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and put some dimensions. I think I want to do this as an ordinate. And this being a flat dimension, it's going to be subject to change. So as we refine and get a sense of what dimensions are going to work well with the bends, we'll kind of have to refine these numbers as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and include the bend lines, include the hole locations. It's going to get kind of busy if we go across all of these, but we'll see what we get and clean it up as we go. Alright, so again, because of the K values stretch, if we were to just add those numbers up, but every time we include a bend and we figure out those internal stresses that are going to stretch or shrink the material, we're going to see some variation in those lengths. So as we refine and actually go through the bending process and get results, these numbers may need to shift a little bit. We may have to go back and adjust our K values to get something more realistic. Alright, so we'll go in with the ordinate dimension on the base. And for our purposes, I'm not thinking these are real critical. If I need to, I'll come back and adjust. And let's see, that one carried all the way across. We have the hole location, another bend line. So we'll put the bend lines in there, the overall. Alright, so that gives us something to reference, and based on the size and all those dimensions, that's about what we're going to need to do to clean that up. Alright, so we have the lengths. If I put an angle, I did not include a distance to that or to that end or that end of the line. So we have a starting point or an intersection. If I put that in as a angle or a chamfer, that would be one thing. I think maybe I'll just go back and include those points and let it define as part of the ordinates. Alright, so I right click on any one of the numbers, click Add Ordinate, it drops it into place. Let's go ahead and right click and see if there are, on the display options, let's re-jog, and re-jog will kind of place it in instead of on top of. So again, right click, Add to Ordinate, come back and pick my starting location. It kind of drops it into the mix. Or right click, go to Select, display options, let everything re-jog, clean that up. Alright, so that's looking as a good start. And for the holes, let's go ahead and drop that in. Not sure where there's going to be a good place to put that. And then technically, I want to say the bend notations being dimensioned, we'll go ahead and send those over to the dims layer as well. Alright, so makes it a little more consistent, maybe doesn't jump out as much, but cleans up the look. Alright, so if I haven't missed any dimensions, then I should now be able to go over and do our final pass on the overalls. So if I'm going to give locations, I would like to have locations that I can measure from. So if I knew in a lot better terms what this was doing, what it had to fit, and what the critical dimensions were, then I could make some better decisions. So a lot of these dimensions are driven by the flat pattern, so I wouldn't necessarily have to come back to all of these intermediate positions. So as long as I can give this details of overall heights, lengths, widths, etc., I should have enough information here to do a after bend inspection to verify that we've ended up with the desired part. Alright, so from there to there, that takes care of the width. And that will give me an overall on the length. And also kind of ties in with the second tab, so I don't have to worry about that one. And then the hole locations, if I was going to bring out some GD&T, I'd want to do kind of a positional tolerance study. Which of these is critical? What's going through? How much can this smaller hole float if the larger one is the more critical? How much can the larger one float if the smaller one is the more critical? What is it aligning to create our geometry? So if we're using, let's say if we're going to use one of the edges, and so we do have to be concerned with that bend radius, so the second line, we'll bring it up to there. And that will give us a rough location. And since we came off of the back, we should be able to do something about like that. Alright, so again, we're not trying to make it perfect on these first passes. We're going to have to do a little more analysis for our dimensional, and then try and tie it back in to make it more readable, more manufacturable as we go.